Okay, this is the first video in the Get You Going making your BTEC game. This one's going to take you through how to create a tile map, or how to configure a tile map so that you can create your level data, whether that's a maze or your platform data. Okay, you'll need to adapt this as you go along, but if you follow the basics, then you can adapt it afterwards. So looking at the BTEC Game Template, loaded up into Visual Studio, if we look at the Solution Explorer, there's a folder called Level Data. In here, there is a file called Level 1, so let's double click that. Anything that starts with a comment will be ignored, and it's just information for us. So I've got various bits, and I've said that at the top up here. I've got various information that I have to supply for the tile map. There are only 3 bits of information. A list of characters that the tile map's made up of, the size of the tile map, in this case each tile is 40 by 40 pixels, and then the actual tile data itself. So let's just take these one at a time. Okay, so if we look at this where it says legal list of tiles, now I've got just characters and they represent different blocks in my tile map. So I've got an X, an M and a W that I'm using for platforms, and you can see above here I've put some comments in just to explain to myself. So I've said X is a wall, M is another wall, W is another type of wall, and you'll need to do this for different graphics. I'm using an @ symbol to specify where the player starts. I'm using a $ symbol for a pickup, but you can have whatever you want for these. I'm using G to indicate the goal, where I get out of the level, if you've got that in this game of yours. And then I'm using a # for an enemy position. If you've got different types of enemies, you'll need different characters for them. Okay, now once I've decided on what tiles I'm going to have, and obviously you can change this to suit you, add extra ones in, I put just a list of them together so you can see I've got them X, W, M, @ $G and E, just in a line. That's important. The game engine needs that in order to build your tile map. Right, then I've gone down and I've got the 40/40. So each one of these squares that makes up my tiles is going to be a graphic that's 40 by 40 pixels, so wide and high. Now, bearing in mind on what size you've got your game, okay, the screen, if you were to have a widescreen game, 1280 by 720, which is what the default is, that will be, with this size tiles, 32 wide and 18 high. If you want smaller tiles, you can make smaller tiles. If you're doing a static game, you need to try and make sure that your tile size fits with your screen resolution. So 40 by 40 goes in horizontally and vertically into 1280 by 720 screen size. You can go smaller. If you go 2020, you'll get smaller tiles. Obviously, you'll need more of them to fill the screen. If you're making a scrolling game, it doesn't really matter if they don't fit to the width of the screen or the height of the screen, because the screen's going to scroll. Okay, and it can scroll by half a pixel if it wants to. All right, so that doesn't really matter. Okay, so there's just a little bit of info in there. If you want to discuss that with me a little bit further. Okay, so we've got the list of tiles. We've got a size, width and height of each tile, and then we get to the tile map. So this is where we use the different characters to represent elements of the game. So you can see here, what I've done is I've got a row, I think it's about 100 long this. So there's 100 characters, so the level is 100 tiles wide, okay, which is probably going to work out to be about 3 and a bit screens. We won't know until we scroll it and find out. So I've outlined it with X's, so that'll be one wall tile, and I've got some M's and I've got some W's, and these are just going to represent different graphics. Okay, and you can see the dollars. So the dollars are where everything is. Wherever I've put a dot, that's just going to get ignored. That's just blank. So I've put that in for me so I can see the positions of things. Any character you use that isn't in the legal list will just be ignored. Okay, and we'll have an empty tile at that location. All right, so that's the tile map. One thing you will need to check is to make sure it's being built for us. So if we right click in Solution Explorer over level 1.text and go properties, what we need to do where it says copy to output directory, let me just make that a little bit wider. What we need to do is make sure that that is set to copy if newer. We need that in the same folder that the executable code is going to be in so that we can load it when the game's running. If you don't do that, you will get file does not exist errors. Okay, later on when you start trying to load the level map. All right, so that's just a little overview of that. Right, let's go and create some code then. So if we go to game setup, so in Solution Explorer, open game and find game setup. Now what we want to do is we want to set up the level when we start the game. So let's go into the constructor for game setup. So that's just at the top and we're going to say start game bracket bracket. Right, that doesn't exist, so we're going to create that. So we do control dot and then select generate method. Okay, so that's just control and full stop. So it creates the method for us. Remember, these will need adding to your design. In here, we're going to create our level generator, our tile map. So we're going to say new level, we'll just call it level. Right, now what we're going to do is we're going to make this flexible. We're going to give it a file name. So we want to give it level1.txt, but that's in a folder. So we're going to say double quotes. So I've done a left parentheses, and I'm going to say double quotes, and I'm going to say level data, because that's the folder it's in. Then I'm going to have to do slash slash, which means just one slash. And then we're going to say level1.txt, and then put a semicolon on the end. Okay, if you spell the file name wrong, you'll get an error because it won't be able to find the file. Okay, so new level doesn't exist, so we're going to create that object. So we're going to say control dot. Look at the options. We're going to say generate class for level in template.game. So it'll create that for us. Okay, and you'll see it should have opened at the top, and it'll have created some basic stuff. Okay, right. What we need to do is whenever you create a new object, you'll need to include various libraries to work with that. So if we just go to the top of game setup and we just copy all these using statements, you'll get used to doing this. So we just copy all those, go to level, and at the top, just paste them all in. Some will be grayed out and we can go back and we can clear those out later. Okay, right, now let's tidy this up a little bit. We need level to be a tile map. So if we go to the line that says class level and go colon and then say tile map, use the picker so that we get a tile map. Right, it's created some field automatic for us. We don't want that, so we're going to delete that. So let's just get rid of that. And it called the file with the level data V, which is a rubbish name. So we're going to change the parameter to file. Okay. And it's got this line here, and we don't need that either. All right, it's tried to guess what we wanted. Okay, so let's now put the tilemap data together. So in the constructor for level, all we need to do is make sure we add this to the tilemap manager so that it gets drawn. So we say add this. Okay, that does that. And then we need to load the file we've been given. So we can say load from, it's down there somewhere, load map from string file. There it is. Okay, again, use the picker, and then we just pass it that file. Okay, and that will load that up. Now, if we try and run this, we'll get an error. Let's have a look. So if we run this, I'm just pressed F5 to run it. Right, so it goes to the title screen. If we press 1, we start the game, just like when we did the breakout game. And now it's crashed. Okay, and we get this horrible error that says we've got null reference. We haven't actually defined any graphics tiles. So let's just stop that. Okay. Right, so it's important that we define the graphics tiles. Now let's just go quickly back to level1.txt. each one of these legal tiles we need a graphic for. Okay, so we can specify the graphic by saying, right, we want a bit of texture, and this is the same process for a sprite. It's like defining a frame for a sprite. We want a texture. We want to put part of it drawn for each tile number. So we'll define that in a minute. So let's have a look where we can put our tiles. So in the content at the bottom of Solution Explorer, there is a folder called Graphics. Now I've pre-built a sprite sheet, okay, but you obviously you've got your own for your game, but this is just a reference to get you going. Right, I'm going to right click over this and I'm going to say open with. You must always edit this from Visual Studio. If you don't, you will lose access to any updates and you'll have to start messing about. So always edit it from this. Don't go into the folder to edit the graphic. Right, so we're going to make sure that we've got fireworks as our editor. So I'm going to add, then I'm going to click the little button. If it's not in the fireworks folder, go into Adobe. It should drop you somewhere, fireworks, and then find the executable. Okay, mine's already set up, but I'm just gonna, that's what I would select. Click OK, and then if you select it, so it should appear there, and then do set as default, and it should say default. So it's our default editor. The reason we use fireworks is because it can tell us the positions of graphics. Okay, so I've loaded it up. These are the graphics that I've predefined. So if I just zoom in, these are the only tiles I've created. Okay, they're just squares. Okay, different colors, but you'll see if you look down at the width and height, they're 40 by 40. So they're the same size as I've defined my tile map. Okay, right, so we'll come back to that in a sec. So let's flip back to Visual Studio and go back to our level data. So back to level, and in the constructor, we're going to now create another subroutine called generate tiles. That's what we'll call it. Doesn't exist, so let's do control, full stop, and select generate method. Okay, get rid of the exception line because we're going to put the code in for that. And then we're going to create our tiles. So it looks like this. So it's just a list. So we've got a thing called my tile list, and we say equals new tile square brackets, and then we put a opening brace. That will create a closing brace. Press enter so it drops down to the next line. And then at the end of the brace, I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see that. Do a semicolon. So inside here is where we're going to define our tiles. And it's a simple process. We just say new tile for each one that we want. We tell it what texture. So the sprites texture is already loaded up for you in something called gm.tx sprite. Then we say the rectangle. So let's flip back to fireworks. You've got two monitors, so you can have fireworks on the other monitor. So I want to know where on the texture this rectangle is. So if I click, don't move it. If I just click the green tile, I can see down at the bottom that its position is 0 for X, Y is 250, and then the width and height is 40. So I'm going to put those numbers in to define where that is. So I'm going to say new rectangle, no, I've forgotten already, 250, and then we know it is 40 by 40. And you can see that the picker is showing you what the numbers mean. So it's X, Y, width, height. Okay, and then I put a comma at the end and I can define another one. So I can say new tile gm.tx sprite new rectangle, and this time if I look at the grey one, that is 40. All the other numbers are the same, so it's 40, 250, 40, 40. Put another comma, do another tile gm.tx sprite new rectangle. I'm using the picker so I don't make a mistake. Right, the red block is at 80, 250. So we say 80, 250, 40 by 40. Put a comma at the end. Okay, so I've defined the tiles that I've got. So it's just what texture, what rectangle bit for that tile. Right, back in the constructor, after generate tiles, we can run another bit of code called check valid tile set. And what this will do is work out if we've created enough tiles. Okay, so let's just run that again. So F5 and see what it does. Start the game, press 1. Right, it crashes, but you get this nice error message. It says your tile map defines 7 tiles and it lists me what they are. So that's X, M, W, A, S, G, and E. But I've only defined 3 tiles, which, yeah, fair enough. That's all we've got. It says I need to add another 4. Okay, and it gives you some advice on how to do this. So I'm going to show you how to do this now. So if we stop this running, so stop debugging, we can go back to level and we can define some dummy tiles. Okay, now if we just look at the level data a minute, these dollars and at signs and the G and the E, they're actually going to be sprites. So they're just placeholders really. We don't want them as tiles, but we need to have some dummy tiles so that we can see where they are and the game engine won't crash. So we need to add those in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another tile. I've got 4 more to add. I've just held my fingers up there, but you can't see that on the video. And I just want dummy. I don't care about what graphics they are. So I'm going to use a standard graphic. So I can say dex.rectangle 50 by 50 because that's big enough. And then I can say tile rectangle size. So the tile map knows how big each tile is supposed to be. Okay, so that's all I need to do. I don't have to work out what rectangle to use. It's predefined for you. And then we can specify a color. So we can use some colors. So color.red. Oh, don't put new though. Just put color.red. Right, I want 3 more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line. So if you've got your cursor on that line and you say Control C, it'll copy the line. Then if you do Control V, it'll paste the whole line. So just paste 3 of them. So we've got 3 tiles added on. So we've got 4 tiles that are all red. Let's just change some of the colors. Blue, so yellow, and you'll notice what I'm doing. I'm highlighting the word red. I'm deleting up to the dot so that when I press the dot again, I get the picker back up. So let's have lime. Okay, so I've got 4 dummy tiles. Right, if we run the game now, hopefully we should see the tile map on screen. So press 1 to start the game, and there you go. So the blue tile is where the player's going to start. The yellow tiles are where the coins are going to be. I think the green tile's the exit, and the red one are the enemies. It goes off the screen, but that doesn't matter yet. We'll set some up in another video to allow us to view the whole tile map. Okay, so we've only got a few bits left to do, and then we can. That's the end of this video. Right, so in our level constructor, we need to do one more thing. Because we've created a world, we need to tell the game engine that the world's bigger. So we need to say engine manager dot world size, and then we're going to say this dot area. So what's happened is now that we've created the tile map, there is the rectangular area of the level has been worked out, and we're just telling the game engine here, we're just saying, right, the world that you live in, that all the sprites can occupy, is this big. So it's bigger than the screen. So we need to do this, otherwise you won't be able to scroll, sprites will just disappear and walk off screen, things like that. Okay. One thing we will add, we'll just after the constructor, so after that closing brace, we're just going to type the word override and then press space and just select cleanup. We're not going to put anything in that yet, but if we have anything set up in the level that needs to be destroyed when we finish a particular level or we quit out of the game, then we'll put some code in there. So we'll just set that up ready. Okay. And that is the end of the first video. So let's just quickly review. So we've got the level map, level1.text. We've got our list of tiles. I've done a little description up here of what they all are. I set the size of each tile, so I want 40 wide, 40 high. Now I know that that is 32 tiles across the screen, 18 high. And then I've just presented the tile map, okay, just by using those characters. Okay. We created the level, and there isn't much to it. We just add the level to the TileMap Manager. We tell it what file we want to load. We generate the tiles, which is the most complicated thing we did. So we had a few there that we had textures for. Obviously, if you've got textures, you need to use those. We did some dummy ones, so we had placeholders, and we set the world up. Okay. In game setup, we just created that method start game where we set up that new level. And that really is all there is to it so far. Okay. The only last thing no, I mean, that's it. I think that's it. Let's just run it, just show you what we've got. Now, obviously, you need to adapt yours. This isn't what your game needs to look like. You need to make your game look different. So you need your textures in there and you need to actually set the level map up. If you're doing a vertical scrolling game, then it just needs to be, the timeline needs to be tall, lots of rows. If it's wide, then it needs lots of characters. Okay, and that is the end of the first video.